Hello and welcome to Video Tours for Tots. If I haven't met you, my name is Mr. Dillon. And for Video Tours for Tots this week, we're going to talk about 2 of the 5 dinosaur families. We're going to talk about the Duckbills and the Hornheads. So we can learn a lot about different animals by looking at their similarities and their differences. And we did 100 dinosaurs a couple weeks ago, but let's go back for a reminder about what are the 5 different dinosaur families. Let's talk about what are the 5 different dinosaur families. First up, the 2-legged hunter family. They're the dinosaurs with sharp teeth, and they walk around on 2 legs and sharp claws. Then you've also got long necks, who are the giant plant eaters with long necks. The Hornheads, which is Triceratops and his friends that are similar to him. Any animal that's got a frill and horns over his head. And then we've got Duckbill type dinosaurs. They were another kind of plant eater, lived in big herds. And then last we've got the armored dinosaurs, ones that are they have bony plates all over their body for protection, usually against the theropods, the 2-legged hunter dinosaurs. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the 5 dinosaur family dance. And what the 5 dinosaur family dance does is it helps you remember what the 5 dinosaur families are. So I'm going to do the dance, and then I'm going to have you do the actions of the dance with me. And then you're going to be able to say the 5 dinosaur families and do the dance with me at the same time. Sound good? Okay, so here I go. 2 legs, long necks, Hornheads, Duckbills, and armor. Okay, now, so go ahead and stand up if you want to, and I'll have you help me out with the 5 dinosaur family dance. You can do the actions with me this time too. Ready? 2 legs, long necks, Hornheads, Duckbills, and armor. Nice. Okay, so now what we're going to do, I'm going to have you say the words along with me too. Here we go. 2 legs, long necks, Hornheads, Duckbills, and armor. Awesome. Good job. Thanks for doing the 5 dinosaur family dance with me. So today we're talking about 2 of the 5 dinosaur families, the Duckbills and the Hornheads. So let's start with the Duckbill dinosaur family. So a scientific name for the duckbill dinosaur family are ornithopods. And the name ornithopod actually means bird feet, which is a kind of weird. Early paleontologists, a long time ago, when they first were looking at duckbill type dinosaurs, thought that their feet looked like birds. And it turns out birds are actually related to some of the theropod dinosaurs that we had been talking about last week, the ones with some feathers. But we're kind of stuck with the name ornithopod for the duckbill type dinosaurs because that's the name that got made up first. And even if we find new information, we might call it something different today if we knew everything. We have to go with what they called it first. That's just the rules of how they name different dinosaurs and everything. So speaking of what we know changing over time, let's talk a little bit about one of the most famous duckbill dinosaurs, and that's Iguanodon. And I have to mention Iguanodon. We don't have one here at Museum of the Rockies, and that's because Iguanodon didn't live in Montana. They lived in Europe. And there were some other similar dinosaurs in Montana, and we're going to talk about them. But Iguanodon gets a special mention because they were the first dinosaur described by modern scientists. And the guy that discovered Iguanodon, he really just found some teeth at first, and then what he realized is it looked a lot like an iguana tooth, just a lot bigger. So he wrote down that this is an animal of the lizard tribe, but of enormous magnitude. And what that means is he found a really big lizard thing. And it turns out this really big lizard thing was Iguanodon. And they found a couple of teeth and some backbones and some leg bones. And so when they drew the first Iguanodon, this is what they came up with. And they had found these big spikes in that fossil bed too. And they weren't really sure where it belonged. So they stuck it on the nose. And then later when they found more Iguanodons, they realized That spike didn't go on his nose. It was actually his big thumb. So a few years later, he gets together with his paleontology friends and they say, we should come up with a name for these really big, weird lizard things. And then they came up with the name Dinosaurs. And it means terrible lizards. And so then all kinds of dinosaurs have been discovered since then, but Iguanodon was the first. So Iguanodon really is one of the most important dinosaurs, and since he was a duckbill, that's why I had to talk a little bit about Iguanodon. So what about that nickname, the duckbill dinosaurs? Why call them duckbills? Let's take a look at some skulls real quick. When you look at the skulls, there's some things we can immediately see. We've got eye holes, and then the teeth, and those are pretty obvious. And dinosaurs have other holes in their skulls that just make their skulls really light, and they're probably full of like muscles and stuff. And then at the very front, for these duckbill type dinosaurs, the skull bones were kind of shaped like a duckbill. So a lot of early drawings and early paleontologists thought, well, it looks like a duckbill. They probably had a duckbill. And later paleontologists found the actual front structures, and it turns out that the duckbills had a beak that point down rather than a bill that points flat out. But the nickname duckbill is really kind of stuck anyways, and I think that's okay too. Let's take a look at Montanasosaurus, one of the first duckbills that you'll see in the Museum of the Rockies when you get here, and see what we can notice about Montanasosaurus and about all duckbill type dinosaurs. First off, let's take a look. You see his beak there? How he has kind of a beak that points down instead of a duckbill that kind of goes out flat. So that's something to notice there. And let's see, how about those back teeth? Are they sharp and pointy for meat or flat for plants? Yep, flat for plants. And do you think he walks on 2 legs or 4 legs? Well, that's actually an amazing thing about duckbill type dinosaurs is their locomotion and how they move around. Duckbill dinosaurs can, of course, stand on 4 legs, but they can also stand up on 2 legs, and they can also walk on 4 legs, walk on 2 legs, run on 2 legs, and also gallop on 4 legs, too. Like, could you imagine a T-Rex running on 4 legs? Or one of the giant long-necked sauropods running on 2 legs? That just can't happen. But since duckbill dinosaurs can do it all, I think that's a really cool thing about duckbill dinosaurs. So an idea I had was maybe we should do a duckbill dinosaur race. So let's find ourselves a little race course. It doesn't have to be something. You could just race your brother, sister, your mom, or dad, or grandma, grandpa, whoever, maybe just out there on your sidewalk. So first, let's try walking on 4 legs. And how about running on 4 legs? That's kind of challenging for us. How about walking on 2 legs? And then running on 2 legs. Hey, nice job with the duckbill dinosaur race. Next in the museum duckbill dinosaur is Oryctodromeus. Can you say that? Oryctodromeus. Good. You know, what's really cool about Oryctodromeus is he was one of the first dinosaurs discovered that we knew actually lived in a burrow or a home underground. Can you think of another animal that lives in a burrow underground? Yeah, so like a gopher. Oryctodromeus is like a gopher dinosaur, a plant eater that lives underground. And maybe there is an underground meat eater dinosaur too, but paleontologists haven't discovered it yet. And before Oryctodromeus was discovered, we didn't know if any dinosaurs lived underground. It was an interesting idea. We look at animals today, and we can kind of guess that maybe there were some kind of dinosaurs that lived that way too. But really, it's hard to say until you find some fossil evidence. Next up, let's talk about Maiasaura. And Maiasaura is one of my favorite dinosaurs. A very important dinosaur in Montana. Maiasaura is actually Montana's state fossil. So it is the official dinosaur of the state of Montana. And I think that's pretty cool. And what's really cool about Maiasaura is that they were the first dinosaur discovered that scientists knew for sure took care of their young. Some animals, when they're born, need a lot of help from their parents, and some animals, when they're born, don't need any help when they're born. And before we discovered Maiasaura, we just didn't know which way dinosaurs worked. Did they take care of their babies, or were babies ready to go when they were born? So how scientists figured this out is we discovered a place in Montana called Egg Mountain that had hundreds of Maiasaura nests in it, and in different layers too. So Maiasaura had been using this area for a long time to make their nests. And in most nests there were broken eggshells, and the pieces were big, and some of them had little tiny pieces of eggshell too. So what it looks like is the babies were returned to the nest, and if you're walking around the nest with some eggshells, you're going to break up those eggs and smash them into smaller and smaller pieces. Wait a minute. Have you seen another duckbill type dinosaur that was taking care of their young? Yeah, it was just the last one, the Erectodromeus. It looks like there were a couple of baby Erectodromiuses in that burrow when they died and got turned into fossils. So that's interesting. I think maybe all duckbill dinosaurs probably took good care of their babies. So right next to Maiasaura are two more duckbill dinosaurs, Brachylophosaurus and Hypacrosaurus. And that just goes to show you there were a lot of different kinds of duckbill dinosaurs in Montana. But they didn't all live at the same time. No, they're spaced out by a couple millions of years at a time too. And Hypacrosaurus is actually really cool because that was another thing I wanted to say about duckbill dinosaurs and why they're really cool. And up on top of his head is what we call a crest. The ones we looked at before don't really have a crest. They just have kind of, I don't know what you could call a normal type dinosaur skull. And some of them had really different and really weird kind of crests. Like Lambeosaurus, which we have some fossils of. And Synthalosaurus, which is from China. And then Parasaurolophus is probably the most famous duckbill dinosaur with a big crest on his head. And what do you think that crest was for? You know, paleontologists are still not 100% sure what it was for. The crest might have helped them to just look bigger to scare away other dinosaurs that might want to eat them, or it could have been just to impress the other dinosaurs. It could have been just to help identify which duckbill dinosaurs, so the Lambeosaurs and the Parasaurolophuses aren't mixing together. And it might have actually helped to make different sounds for these dinosaurs too. Some of them are hollow, and it can kind of act like the inside of a musical instrument to kind of amplify the sound too. So maybe they were just trying to talk. So maybe it was just a way to talk to other dinosaurs with their weird head crests. And last, we're coming up to the Museum of the Rockies is Edmontosaurus. And what I think is really cool about Edmontosaurus is that it is a duckbill type dinosaur that's really, really big. Duckbills came in all types of sizes, from Erectodromeus, the burrowing duckbill, was only about 7 feet long, and Maiasaura was about 30 feet long or so. And then Edmontosaurus was 45 feet long, which is almost as long and as big as the T-Rex. Another cool thing about Edmontosaurus and some other duckbill type dinosaurs is paleontologists have found skin impressions in the fossils too. No feathers, but we do have a good idea of what kind of skin they had. So they probably had bumpy, lumpy, scaly skin. So Edmontosaurus is a really cool duckbill dinosaur. One of my favorites for sure. Okay, let's switch to the next dinosaur family. We just talked about the ornithopod, duckbill type dinosaurs. Let's talk about the hornheads, the marginocephalians. Can you think of a hornhead marginocephalian type dinosaur? I bet you know one. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Triceratops. Triceratops is definitely the most famous hornhead marginocephalian dinosaur. And sometimes marginocephalians are called ceratopsians after Triceratops, and that's okay too. So if you think about the word marginocephalian, you can actually take that scientific word and break it up. And margin means edge, and cephalus means head. So they're the dinosaurs with the weird edges on their heads. And that weird edge on their head is called a frill, and then lots of them have horns on top of it too. So I call them the hornhead dinosaur family. And all of them are plant eaters too, just like the ornithopod, duckbill type dinosaurs. Well, since we're thinking about Triceratops, let's look at the museum's Triceratops first. Man, at Museum of the Rockies, we love Triceratops. One of the first dinosaurs in the collection was MOR004, which we nicknamed Mort for the Museum of the Rockies Triceratops. And our current curator of paleontology is Dr. John Scannella, and he loves Triceratops too. That's his favorite dinosaur of all time too. So let's take a look at the Triceratops. What does Triceratops' frill look like? Well, let's see. He's got some little mini horns on the edge of the frill. He's got 2 eye horns. Wait a minute, where are the eyes anyways? And then he's got 1 nose horn too. And, oh, actually, you know what? Museum of the Rockies has found so many Triceratops, we've noticed some differences in Triceratops as they grow up. What do you notice between this baby Triceratops and a grown-up Triceratops? Yeah, those little edge horns kind of disappear. And the direction the horns are curving, a baby Triceratops horns grow up, and then the grown-up Triceratops horns kind of point down. So that's kind of different for sure. And then, actually, we can look at an old grandpa Triceratops that we have too. You might notice something else is different too. Look, there are those big holes in the top of the frill. And those holes probably weren't just actual holes. They were probably covered in skin and everything. But with the holes in there, you can get a really big skull that doesn't weigh quite as much. If that whole thing was bone, that head would be, well, even heavier than it is. It's already pretty heavy. And a long time ago, paleontologists thought that the old grandpa Triceratops with a big flat frill and the holes in the frill was a different dinosaur altogether called Torosaurus. But was it? Museum of the Rockies paleontologists noticed that the biggest Triceratops have some thin sections in that skull, and nobody's ever really found a little or baby Torosaurus. And we already know that Triceratops' skull changes as they grow, so maybe Torosaurus was just an old grandpappy Triceratops. What do you think? Do you think that old grandpappy Triceratops has holes in it, or do you think it's a totally different dinosaur called Torosaurus? It's an interesting question. The next one we can see is called Iguanodon. And the skull of Iguanodon on display is kind of squashed and laying down. So here's another picture of what it looked like. Taking a look at the Iguanodon skull, what do you notice? And let's actually compare that to the Triceratops. First off, where are those eyes? Okay, and then there are 2 horns off the back of the frill, kind of pointing backwards. It's got 2 big holes like Grandpa Triceratops back there. And you know what? I don't see any horns over his eyes. He's got 2 little cheek horns off to the sides and a nose horn. But that nose horn's really weird too. Instead of pointing up like a Triceratops, it curves down in front of it. Well, that's really different than a Triceratops. There's a lot of different hornhead type dinosaurs. Now wait a second. I thought Triceratops used its horns for fighting. But Iguanodon's horns don't really point in the right direction, sticking off the back of the head pointing backwards and then curving down in front of his nose. Maybe paleontologists have been wrong about the hornhead dinosaurs using their horns to fight. After all, a lot of other animals have really weird heads. for decoration. And even those duckbill dinosaurs we were talking about earlier, they have weird heads too. They don't use them for fighting. Let's look at the next one, Achilosaurus. And let's compare Achilosaurus to Iguanodon and Triceratops. Achilosaurus' head has got, let's see, does he have any horns off the back of the frill? Yep, 2 big ones. 2 big holes like Grandpa Triceratops and Iguanodon. And then he doesn't have horns over his eyes like Triceratops. He's got kind of lumpy bits. Just big lumpy bones. Instead of actual horns, they're just kind of lumps. He's also got 2 cheek horns, and he's got a lumpy nose horn instead of a pokey nose horn, and it doesn't curve. But that doesn't look very useful for fighting off a T-Rex either, with lumpy eye bones and the horns poking off. Achilosaurus and Iguanodon are pretty similar when you look at it. And a lot of paleontologists are pretty sure that Iguanodon came first and then Achilosaurus evolved from that. And the last one for today, I have to mention him because of his name, Montanasosaurus. Montanasosaurus is a pretty cool dinosaur too. And since we're comparing skulls, let's take a look. Alright, doesn't have a very big frill, just a little frill. It's got a couple cheek horns. Do you see any holes like Grandpa Triceratops? Yep, they're really small though. Any of those big horns coming off the back of the frill? Nope. Any horns over the eyes? Nope. Any nose horn? No, none of that. All he has is just that frill, just that bony part over the back of his neck. So that's little Montanasosaurus with his simple frill, and he was only about 10 feet long instead of Triceratops, who was about 30 feet long. I just wanted to say that there are all kinds of really weird hornhead dinosaurs. Some of them have no spikes, or 2 spikes on the back of the frill, or a lot of spikes back there. Some have eyebrow horns, or eyebrow bumps, or sometimes those horns curve off to the side instead of straight out. There are just lots of really weird hornhead dinosaurs. They didn't all live at the same time. In fact, the ones who did live at the same time tended to have really different heads from each other, so they could tell each other apart. So, that's why the hornhead dinosaurs are pretty cool. Alright, the craft for today is Erectodromes puppets, and that's the little duckbill that lived in a burrow, so you'll need the sheet and another piece of paper, and some coloring utensils, a pair of scissors, and some sort of stick, a straw or dowel or popsicle stick or something, and a tube. And I think you can make a tube too if you don't have one. And the tube will be the burrow for the burrowing dinosaur. And first step is always going to be we can color it. And you can color any color you want to. And when that's done, we're going to cut it out. And then when they're all cut out, then it's time to put a stick on it. So fold it over and tape up 2 of the sides. And then put the stick inside it and tape it onto the stick. Nice and easy. And then you can't be done right there. He can come in and out of his burrow there, but I thought it'd be a good idea to add some grass too. So to add some grass to it, just cut any old strip of paper and then color that green. Tape that onto the top of the tube. And then take your scissors and just chop and chop and chop and chop and chop randomly and make a nice little grassy patch for him to crawl out of. And then your burrow is complete, and you can come poke his head out and see if there's any danger, and pop his head back in. Or if he looks out and there's no danger, then he can come out of his burrow and go around and play with your other dinosaur toys. And back in the burrow when he's done. Another idea I had too was instead of putting it on a stick, just make a finger puppet. So just tape up the 2 sides and stick your finger in the end, and then you've got your Erectodromes family finger puppets. Our story for today is Maya, A Dinosaur Grows Up by John R. Horner and James Gorman. illustrated by Doug Henderson. And we're only going to read one chapter out of this story because it's a pretty long book. Chapter 1, Out of the Egg. There were no clouds the day that Maya, the duckbill dinosaur, came out of her egg. The sun beat down on the hot, dry ground. It shone on the nest of dinosaur eggs. The mother dinosaur had laid her eggs on the ground and covered them with leaves and twigs. Even under the leaves, inside the eggs, the baby dinosaurs could feel the sun. Inside Maya's egg, it was dark. Maya felt that she had to stretch. Although the egg was as big as a grapefruit, it was getting too small for Maya. She was 1.5 feet long. She was curled up in a tight ball, too tight. She started to squirm and peep and squeak. Her mother, who was 30 feet long and weighed 2 tons, put her head down low over the nest and listened to the sounds. Then she scraped the leaves off the eggs to let the sun shine on them. Suddenly it was light inside Maya's egg. Maya didn't know what light was or what the sun was, because she had always been inside the egg, but the light made her want to get out of the egg even more. She began to bang her nose on the shell, jerking her head up and down. On the tip of her nose was something like a tooth. It would wear out and fall off after she had hatched, but for now it was useful. She banged it against the egg with all her strength. Finally the egg cracked. Then a bigger crack appeared. Soon the whole top came off, and Maya, the baby dinosaur, climbed out into the sun to get her first look at the world. She was mostly gray and looked like a big lizard. She had a red mark on both sides of her back that made her look different from her brothers and sisters. She was also different because she was the first one in her nest to break out of her egg. As soon as Maya tried to move, she fell, as all babies do. The first thing she stumbled into was another baby dinosaur, just like herself, coming out of an egg. The next thing she did was step on an egg and break the top. That was all right because another baby was trying to hatch out of that egg. When Maya caved in his roof, it just helped him along. Wherever Maya turned, there were more dinosaurs, all her own size, and all just as awkward. Each had just hatched or was right in the middle of hatching. By the end of the day that Maya hatched, all the other eggs had hatched too. There were 20 squeaking, tumbling little baby dinosaurs. All around their nest were other nests, each on top of a mound of dirt. Each nest was 6 feet wide and scooped out of the ground, so it was shaped like a salad bowl. There were 200 nests, all filled with baby dinosaurs. The mother dinosaurs who had laid the eggs stayed by the nests or went to the banks of the nearby stream to gather food. There were berry bushes by the stream, and in it fish waved their tails, alligators hunted, and turtles on logs lay basking in the sun. Maya didn't know anything about the other dinosaurs or the turtles and the stream. She couldn't even see over the edge of her nest. All she knew was that she was hungry. Of course, she didn't know exactly what hungry was, since she had never needed to eat before. She just felt so empty that she squeaked. It was such a loud squeak that it knocked her down. She was surprised that noises that loud could come out of her. She felt hungry again, so she stood up and squeaked again. All the other babies were doing it too. Soon it seemed like the most natural thing to do, to squeak and make a noise that would send a human mother running out the door. That isn't what Maya's mother did. She came right over to the nest. Maya looked up and saw an enormous reddish-brown creature with a mouth that looked kind of like a duck's bill. The bill was full of berries. As Maya watched and squeaked, her mother bent down and dropped the berries from her mouth. Maya wasn't frightened. She was a dinosaur, so her mother looked just right, big and red with a mouth full of berries. Maya smelled her mother's mouth, and then she sniffed the berries. They smelled so good she grabbed them in her mouth, started crunching them between her teeth. They tasted so good she grabbed more and ate them. So did the other babies. The only thing on Maya's mind was berries. She pushed and shoved on her unsteady legs like a greedy little puppy, trying to eat every last berry in the nest. Soon the feeling that made her squeak stopped. She wasn't hungry anymore. She stopped eating, and she stopped squeaking. The sun was beating down on her, and it was hot. She closed her eyes, and she went to sleep. It had been a very big day. So that's the end of our story for the week. Chapter 1 of Maya, a Dinosaur Grows Up. And later in that book, she grows up and faces some dangers, and then eventually makes the nest of her own. So it's a pretty good story if you ever get a chance to check it out. So that's all for video tours for Tots this week. I hope you had a good time learning about Duckbill and Hornhead dinosaurs. And in 2 weeks, we're going to talk about space missions, and that should be pretty fun. So until then, I'll see you next time.